There are moments when life feels perfectly timed, when insight arrives not by force but by alignment. What if awakening isn't about becoming someone new, but about remembering ancient rhythms that have always been guiding us? Today's conversation invites us into that remembering. Welcome to I Awaken, a space for reflection, consciousness, and the subtle shifts that change how we see ourselves and the world. I'm your host, Archita. Today I am joined by Aleksandra Ceho, an international instructor of astrology, tarot, and hermetic philosophy with the Modern Mystery School. With over 2 decades of professional practice and a lifelong relationship with the stars, Alexandra bridges ancient wisdom with modern life in a way that feels grounded, practical, and deeply resonant. In this episode, we'll explore whatever aligns cosmic cycles, archetypes, intuition, and how ancient wisdom can support awakening in everyday life. So, welcome, Alexandra, to I Awaken. It's a pleasure to have you here today.
Oh, thank you so much, Archita. It's lovely to be here with you.
The pleasure is all mine. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to, dive into this conversation with you. So yeah, let's start. Alexandra, you have been immersed in astrology since childhood, which is fascinating. So I'm curious, when did your relationship with the stars shift from curiosity into a lived spiritual language that guided your life?
Oh my goodness, that's an amazing question. I'm going to be honest with you. I was exposed to astrology as a child, um, and I have to say that from from the very moment that I began working with uh, it was something that guided my life. It wasn't just a simple curiosity. There was something in me, even as a small child, that recognized that there was deep truth and wisdom to this spiritual system. And so I it informed me not only of myself and my own nature, but even as a child, I immediately began applying it to the people who were important around me because I wanted to understand them as well. I guess you could say that it never was, mere curiosity for me or entertainment. From the very moment that I laid eyes on it, I knew that there was deeper truth to it.
Wow, that is something so raw and so true. I mean, there are times in our life when we look at certain things and they just make sense and we can't explain it to to anyone actually. But I'm really glad that you looked through that, and yeah, it's amazing. And that transition from observing the cosmos to conversing with it feels like the beginning of true initiation.
I love that you say it that way because I truly think that it was. And I sometimes joke and I say that astrology was my first love. I when I encountered it, there was that recognition and that spark of light that just woke me up and gave me not only a sense of belonging, but also a sense of purpose. And I truly feel like when we first encounter that sense of purpose in our lives, that is that kind of moment of initiation, um, where you start to realize that there's more and that your life has meaning and purpose, that you're not just here to, um, enjoy some time in hedonistic pleasures and then pass away.
Absolutely. I mean, not everybody realizes that. So I'm glad that you did and you're making others realize it too. It's amazing, truly. And, let's stay with that. Alexandra, many people see astrology as prediction or personality typing. And I won't lie, I am also one of them. So, from your perspective, what do we misunderstand when we don't see astrology as a language of consciousness and alignment?
Well, I always tell people that I don't blame them for not understanding the depth of astrology because most of what is out there really is surface. It's superficial and it really is a personality typology. And that's because uh, some genius person somewhere managed to take astrology and mix it in with marketing, basically. And that's how we have a lot of this horoscope and personality boxes and typologies. The thing that's missing from most of what you see out there is the fact that you actually need to create the entire chart. Your date of birth or your birthday is certainly a piece or a part of the puzzle. However, your natal chart, your birth chart, is a snapshot of the cosmos from the very moment that you were born. And the alignment of the planets, the elements that are present, the sacred geometries, the language and the flow of energy between all of these heavenly bodies creates energies that you bring in with you that, of course, are part of your nature, but also are energies that you brought in to fulfill your purpose. And you use these energies to create. You use these energies to have good relationships or try to have good relationships. You use these energies to manifest financial abundance and wellness and health. And when you begin to understand your astrological makeup, it gives you the opportunity to grow beyond the limitations that you have encountered in your life. One of the things that I tell people is that very often when there's a quality that we lack or um, a challenge that we've come up against, if it's not in one part of our nature, it's what we need is probably in another part. And when you really get into astrology, you begin to discover the multiplicity of who you are and how multidimensional you are instead of these personality typologies. And it's truly a beautiful thing because it awakens you to gifts that you may not have known were there or that maybe you just didn't really put your hand into very often. And I really think it is a beautiful system of growth that is available to people instead of a limitation.
Yeah, that's so fascinating to know because astrology, I've realized this through this conversation that astrology is so much deeper than what we see on the surface, and I believe that a lot of these misconception about astrology arises from its capitalization. So that's very true what you said. And what stands out is how astrology becomes less about fate and more about awareness, helping us move in harmony with what's already unfolding. So you have put it very beautifully.
Astrology is the art of helping you become a star. That's what it is. And when
Wow.
you
Yeah.
really work with it, it is alchemical, transformational. It is, it awakens the spirit. That's what it does.
Absolutely. I mean, you couldn't have put it in a better way. That was perfect. And let's stay with that, Alexandra. When people feel lost or disconnected, what deeper energetic or archetypical pattern do you often see at play beneath the surface?
Oh my gosh, well that's an amazing question. So, very often when people feel lost, or not entirely themselves, there are answers that are missing. And From my time in the modern mystery school, I've studied many other hermetic arts and philosophies, and one of them is the Universal Kabbalah. And in the Universal Kabbalah, there are questions that we answer that give us a sense of direction and purpose. And when we're missing answers like, for example, where am I going? What is my direction in life? That becomes very disorienting. And those are answers that we need to ask for ourselves, but sometimes we really are kind of lost, and we do need a little bit of a reminder about who we are and where we've come from. And that's where astrology can really fit in. So are there necessarily astrological aspects that I see happen in that way? No, usually it's life. Somebody loses a job that they really loved, or a relationship ends, or a dream that they've been chasing doesn't manifest. And when those things happen, you have to fall back on yourself. You have to fall back on who you are, your nature, and you have to reclaim that so you can pave a new path forwards. And so, whether you are looking at your natal chart or even using astrological forecasting, it gives you the opportunity to do just that because sometimes you just need to pave a new path forward.
So, so true. And I feel that, you know, uh, people love when they can put a definition to something. So, when they feel lost or disconnected, I think astrology is something that gives them that definition. It explains, like you said, there are so many questions unanswered. So, I feel like astrology is something that helps them find answers to those questions. And that perspective feels so relieving, understanding that confusion often aligns and signals a transition, not failure. So, yeah, so true.
Absolutely. And a lot of pain that people experience in life is often because they are missing that sense of direction and purpose. And it's very disorienting for us as human beings not to have it. And so for anyone who is listening right now, and if that's something that you do feel that you are lacking in life, I absolutely encourage you to sit within and answer those questions for yourself. And it's important that you do so because unfortunately sometimes there are unscrupulous astrologers out there who will um, answer the questions for you, but it's your life and you're the one who has that connection to your purpose. And as an astrologer, I often remind people about where to look, but I don't tell them what they are. That's for them to determine.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, you can just guide them, but at the end, it's their life. Like you said, it's their job to find those answers, and you can't do that for them. That's so true. So, Alexandra, moving on, how do these cosmic or archetypical cycles show up in practical life, in relationships, career choices, or moments of awakening?
Oh my goodness, in so many ways. But I think that perhaps I'd like to talk about something that I don't usually talk about. And that is that there are series of astrological events that we experience throughout various stages of life. And so, for example, one of those kind of rites of passage that's a little more well known is something called the Saturn return. And we experience the Saturn return, ideally well, not ideally, generally around 29 and a half years old, but it can start anywhere from 28 to 30 years old. And the Saturn return and other aspects that we encounter, and there's a series of them that actually happen in midlife, in your early 40s, that are believed to be part of what we call the midlife crisis. But there are absolutely astrological aspects that bring us to certain stages of life that encourage us to think in certain ways. And so, for example, that Saturn return that I just mentioned, it's a time of reconciliation with the self. We look back on all that we have accomplished over the past 30 years, give or take, and we have the opportunity to build on and consolidate all the great, amazing things that we've done. And then we also have the opportunity to course correct and to reconcile with ourselves the things that we haven't done an amazing job with as well. So, based on our natal chart, we all have our talents, our abilities, our skills, our areas of wisdom. And then we have aspects that are happening or what are called transits to the chart that influence our way of thinking. And then on top of it, there's always what's happening with the worldly astrology. And how many times have people made bad career decisions or had an emotional outburst in a relationship simply because it's the full moon? So these are things that we want to be cognizant of because as human beings, we are very perceptive and receptive to the astrological forces. And so that includes the internal ones that come from our natal chart, as well as current astrological events and the transits that are affecting our chart that are opening up opportunities or encouraging us to heal and release things from our past. And so when you work with an astrologer, very often um, they will encourage you to look at all of these things because of our innate receptivity and reactivity to these forces.
Wow, that is so interesting to know. I mean, I always knew that astrology deeper impact on life, but I never realized how deeply connected it is with our day-to-day life and everything that we do, the way we react and the events that happen in our life. So I think now it just makes so much sense. And it's fascinating how life mirrors the sky, patterns repeating until we are ready to meet them consciously. So yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Oh, my pleasure. There's so much beauty to it, and when you truly begin to work with it, you're afforded the opportunity to heal, to release, to free yourself from the past, and also to overcome challenges and become stronger along the way.
And that's beautifully put. So, Alexandra, for someone listening who's curious but new to astrology or hermetic wisdom, what's a simple way to begin working with alignment rather than feeling overwhelmed by information?
That is an amazing question because if you Google astrology, there's a lot out there. So, um,
Yeah.
I always like to encourage people to examine their own relationship with the stars. And I generally put out a monthly blog, just a little summary about what's going on and when it's happening. But one of the easiest ways to begin understanding the effects of astrology on you as a human being is simply to observe moon cycles. So the cycles of the moon greatly impact our emotional nature throughout the course of a moon cycle. And as we break down a moon cycle, you generally have the waxing period where the light of the moon is growing, and then you have the waning period where the light is decreasing, and then of course everyone's favorite, which is the full moon. So when you begin to observe and track your relationship with these cycles of the moon, this gives you an indication as to your receptiveness of the planets. And then, of course, it's also very easy to track your relationship to things like Mercury retrograde because it's there's always plenty of information available about it. There's astrological calendars and that kind of thing. But self-observation is an incredibly powerful tool to really understand your personal connection with astrology. And so whether you start with observing the cycles of the moon or eclipses or retrograde periods, retrogrades are also easy because there's at least 3 of them a year with Mercury. You can begin to understand how it impacts you. And of everything, that is the most important thing. And I like to encourage people to track these things and go through periods of self-observation without reading other interpretations because you have a personal relationship with those forces. And so when you sit and when you go through that self-observation, it gives you the opportunity to realize just how much you have mastered the energy of that planet. Because as human beings, that really is what we are trying to do. We are trying to master the forces that each planet represents. And for example, the moon is the sphere of emotions. Mercury governs over the mind and communication, Venus over love and relationships. And so when we sit down and we observe our interactions with these forces, it really gives us a chance to understand just how much we have mastered in our lives. And sometimes, you might expect to be, sitting on your couch crying into your bucket of ice cream because it's the full moon. And yet you might just feel a sense of complete and perfect peace and deeply intuitive instead. And it's a blessing when you can come to understand just how much you have mastered the energy of that planet in your life.
Okay, that was very helpful. And yeah, like you said, also so very true. I mean, you know, so many times I have tried to learn more about astrology, and whenever I've Googled it or, looked it up in any website, they most of the time they just, sell these courses on how to learn astrology. But nobody ever, explained it to me in, such a beautiful way like you have. So that was amazing. And yeah, I love how empowering that feels. I mean, using wisdom as a compass and not a rule book.
Absolutely. And so to put it again succinctly, our job as human beings is to master the energy of the planets and the stars. And that brings growth, transformation, goodness, service, kindness, compassion. Everything you want happens when you embark on that process of mastering your relationship to each of the planets and stars.
Yeah, and that trust in knowing that there is meaning even in the unraveling of the universe, it feels deeply reassuring. Like it just gives some sense to our lives. So yeah. And for our listeners, I'll offer this reflection today. If your life is unfolding exactly as it needs to right now, what might be what might it be preparing you to understand or embody? Ask yourself this. And awakening happens when we align with timeless wisdom and allow life to initiate us. One cycle, one insight, one moment at a time. So, Alexandra, this has been amazing. And for listeners who want to explore astrology, tarot, or hermetic philosophy more deeply, where can they find your work?
So they are welcome to find me on astrologerroyale.com. And there, they can find more information about readings and classes. And I also have a free ebook that is there called Star Powered Resilience. And it is actually your guide to becoming stress free based on your astrology sign. But my pro tip is that if you happen to know your Mercury and Mars sign, that actually takes the information deeper and gives you more personalized tips as well.
Amazing. I'll have all the details on my show listing, and our listeners can feel free to reach out to you whenever and however they want. And once again, thank you for bringing such clarity, depth, and grounded mysticism into this conversation. I have learned a lot from our conversation today, and I'm sure our listeners have too. So, to our listeners, thank you for joining us on I Awaken. If today's conversation resonated, allow yourself to notice the subtle alignments already present in your life. Sometimes awakening doesn't arrive as a revelation, but as a quiet recognition that you are exactly where you need to be. Until next time, keep listening and stay open.